Episode 111, Mom's Basement MMA. As always, it is your guy, Tyler. And today I have royalty in the house. I have the Queen of the North, Katie Saull. Katie, I really appreciate you joining me from the Emerald Isle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. I have probably the most jank podcast ever, but you know what? I'm gonna roll with it. I will wear that badge proudly. I wanted to kind of get right into it with you. You train out of SBG Ireland. Everyone knows that the who's who of Europe trains there, but there's one person that trains there that I feel doesn't get the due that she probably should get. Sinead Kavanaugh. She just competed at Bellator 275. That was in Dublin. What an incredible performance. And I was hoping I could get your opinion on her performance and what just what's it like training with somebody of that caliber day in and day out.
The cool thing about Sinead is I was fortunate enough is probably a better word, to meet her about 5 years ago when I visited Ireland. And I was mainly training with her and Danny Nealon, who's another pro there. And I can work with someone of that size, especially grappling. Don't really stand with her because it doesn't help her that much. And, she cracks, but she'd even pull back and it wouldn't be helpful. But with the grappling, I still feel I'm kind of a little unit there so I can push her. And she's just a fun person to be around. Like she has such a story and still just brings a positive energy to the mat. There's so many people like that where you would be like, oof, is that too intense? And it's like, no. I finally had a little bonding moment with her out for someone's birthday too, and we had a good hour-long chat. And I just feel like I see a lot of myself in her, and that we have similar lineage, similar background. And she even kind of gave me a little speech after one of my tough losses, and she'd had something happen similar in Bellator. You probably know which one. And we had a chat about that. She's just a good person, and she's been through a lot, and I respect her. And my reaction to her win was arguably embarrassing. I was screaming at the top of my lungs when she pulled that off. So, and when I say pull off, she persevered. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So.
And her opponent, I know she's in Northern Ireland, Leah McCourt. She's a very talented fighter in her own right. And that was a war. That was a war.
Mental heart battle between the two of them, one of those. That's terribly put, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally get it. And one of the things about Kavanaugh and you is I feel like the trajectory for both of your careers is very, very similar. When you look at her career, she had a rough start at the beginning. Like she was fighting these really tough girls. I know she fought Arlene, and she dropped that fight, but she's fought some of the toughest girls on the planet, and things don't really go her way. And then a switch flips, and then all of a sudden she's building momentum and she's finding herself in title fights. And now with a victory against McCourt, it's a possibility, depending on what happens with Blenko and Cyborg, it's a possibility that she could get hit up like, hey, you're going to take the winner. I think it's really, really interesting that that's her background. And then you look at your fighting career, similar kind of entry. You show up, things don't go your way at first. You find yourself on the wrong end of some split decisions that we'll get to in a minute. And then all of a sudden, now you're starting to build momentum. I feel like you guys have a lot in common in just the way your career has unfolded up to this point.
It did. It felt that way. And when we met, I remember she was riding her bike to the gym and she was just like, stops. Because she's that girl. She's so real. She's not flashy. She's not like trying to be anything she isn't. She's just like grinding away, and she stops and gives me the whole just look at me now. Like, just keep at it. Like, I've had similar luck, and it's cool that we've even had those moments together too. So yeah, it's neat.
I'm really excited to see kind of what's next for her. She's a really talented fighter, and I feel like she doesn't get her proper due, especially over here in the States. I think a lot of us stateside probably only remembered like the Cyborg fight. We probably forgot about a lot of her other history. And I told people going into the McCourt fight, I was just like, I'm telling you, that fight's going to be something else. She's going to bring it. Like, I don't get me wrong, I bet on her to win, but like, I publicly wasn't going on record predicting a winner because I was like, that fight's going to be close.
You have a judo black belt and a jiu-jitsu black belt recently. I was like, who knows? Like, so.
Yeah, so like publicly I didn't say anything because I was like, I didn't want to get the egg on my face if things didn't work out, and I didn't want to jinx anything. But fortunately enough, she won, and Tyler won too because I got a nice steak dinner courtesy of Sinead. So thank you very much for that. I want to shift gears. I want to talk specifically about Brave CF 57 that was in Bahrain. Can you tell the good people out there what the heck were you doing in Bahrain of all places?
Yeah, so my other half, my partner there, Brad Katona, for like pretty hardcore MMA fans, you probably know exactly who that is, so it's true. He went over to fight for the Brave Bantamweight title, and he was fighting the hometown hero in the Bantamweight division, but he's also from Bahrain. You have a lot of Bahrainian fighters Bahrainian-based fighters who represent Team KHK who aren't from Bahrain. But the cool thing about Hamza Kuheji was that he is Bahrainian. That's the right word. I think that's what you say, Bahrainian. And he's also a nice, humble guy, it seemed. But what they were doing was tough for me because it was a lot of pushing Hamza, and there was a lot of unexpected there was even a press conference where there was an unexpected animosity towards Brad and stuff. And yeah, that's part of the fight game, but it was tough for me. It was good practice because I see Brad on the high levels dealing with this stuff back and forth where the crowd's for him, against him. And it was more of a eye-opening experience. I've never been to the Middle East. It was so neat, but I was stressed out for about a week. So I was just very relieved that when he did win 4, if not 5 of those rounds, that the 2 of the proper judges made the right call. It was a very clear victory and he earned it, and it was exciting. So it was stressful.
If you guys don't know who Brad is, you're missing out. He was in the UFC previously. This guy got thrown into the deep end right away. And he's fought like the best of the best, and he's beaten the best of the best. Check out Ultimate Fighter season 26 or 27, something like that. He did really, really good. He's an absolute stud.
Thank you, and it's gonna keep going. So
absolutely. And he's a young dude. He's in his athletic prime right now. Like he's just like scratching the surface as to how good he can be. I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about your tenure in Invicta. You showed up in the promotion at a weird time. The pandemic is like raging, and like one of the things that is kind of interesting about it, or I don't know, just kind of food for thought, Invicta isn't like the UFC. Like you guys aren't having events every other weekend or every other month even, and it's like one of those things like, even if times were quote unquote normal, there's 3 or 4 Invicta cards a year. And they're big cards. And it's like, well, shit, like we got to show up. Like they don't happen very often. You got to be like on your A game. And I was meaning to ask you, just in the height of the pandemic, with that being said about just the Invicta offerings and how there aren't a lot of them, are there any additional like challenges or things that people may not know about that are unique to being an Invicta fighter?
Yeah, it's such a wonderful promotion to work for, and it's not just because I'm trying to push who I work for. It's just that it is. They treat you so well. It's such a nice experience when you're there. But the interesting part about it was I actually, right before the pandemic, was the first one I got, and it was on a week notice, and I had to take it. I knew it was a hard fight, and the thing about Invicta is you only kind of deserve to be there if you're kind of willing to take those chances, those shorter notice calls, because I feel like Shannon's earned that. It's like, well, if you don't want it, you don't want it. And it's not easy. I've heard people back in the day being like, yeah, I've gotten the call. It was 3 weeks. It's like, oh, what can you do? Like,
Right.
just do it. And so I've just worked so hard so long that I just don't care anymore when I hear that. So I'm kind of a year-round athlete, and it just is. But so there is the idea that you won't get as much notice, and that's okay. I'm not even blaming the promotion, because especially during the pandemic, Shannon had to jump through so many hoops. And I was like, but the best part about this coming year is I think you're going to see more. The whole goal with us, her selling the company and working with Access and all that, is that she is probably going to have one. She has one again already in May 11th. I think she's going to have one kind of every second month now, if not more. So I am excited for that. If you ever do, I guess the last thing to say about that is different about Invicta is Shannon has like an open door policy. She like will reach out and talk to any athlete one-on-one, and you can message her. And so that's the cool part. If you're looking to go there, you just have to be really serious and ready to take opportunity.
One of the things that I think's challenging, not only about Invicta, but number one, being a female fighter and fighting in an atomweight class, is when shit hits the fan, which it's ought to do in the age of the pandemic. Getting a body is very, very difficult. And in your last bout, you were supposed to fight Tabitha Watkins. That cancels out. She's forced to drop. And for you, it's not like you train at like Glory MMA where you're right there in the vicinity. Like you train out of Europe, and you have to fly across the Atlantic Ocean to get to the States to fight. Was there ever a point before they announced that it was going to be Tamika Jones where you're like, well, shit, I came all this way. I might not even fight.
Oh yeah, there was one evening. So it was funny because in fairness, I kept bugging Shannon so much to be on another card, even though I'd been on the August one. I do that to her all the time. She knows. And so I went over to Canada for Christmas, and I even said, hey, Shannon, I'm on this side if you need to call me. And sometimes when people are like that, you're thinking they're not taking it that seriously if they don't care about the preparation. But I just know it's not that case with me. I just train really hard, and I'm ready, and my weight's usually under control. And I just was already over there for Christmas. And so when I took the fight with Tabitha, when she fell out, I was like, you know what? We came down to stay with two friends of ours, Gina Mazzani and Tim Elliott, and we've gotten kind of close with them. And we'd had a great training trip. Brad was starting out his training camp for the title fight. And we had a hell of a time out there. And we learned a lot at Glory with James Krause. Again, it was my second time, and my headspace was so much better. I was so fried in August. It just wasn't the same experience, and it was made much better. And so when I found out that we weren't fighting Tabitha, I just said, okay, we came for a training trip. It was what it was. We thought we were fighting. And then I woke up to Tamika Jones. So when I accepted it as well as I had, I think it was the fight gods giving me a break and being like, okay, fine. You didn't act like a brat, so here's the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Here and first and foremost, obviously we have to give credit to Tamika for taking that fight on short notice, but I think you also have to get credit too, because when you're in a camp, you're game planning for Watkins, right? And then to have the carpet pulled under you at the last minute, now you have to fight somebody with not a lot of experience. There's not a lot of tape on her, and you may have to change things at the last minute. I feel like that's the other side of the coin that we don't really talk about a whole lot.
No one really mentions it. Sometimes you hear like in the UFC, you'll hear like a Cormier or even a Bisping mention that, there's no pressure on this person coming in. There's a lot of pressure on the one who knew. And it was so funny because there was such a pandemic surge and there was so much going on that people forgot that I took the fight on the 2 weeks notice, but it was more about the 4 days. I went, yeah, now it's like, who took it on shorter notice? But it was funny because I understood she did the 4 days. I knew she wasn't gigantic. When I found out she was such this heavy wrestler, I did a lot of mental gymnastics, but I just kind of went numb, and I was proud of myself in that I said, I do these grappling rounds day in, day out with, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the world. And it's like, just go do what you do every day. And that was my big thing. And so I showed up and I felt good.
I'm glad you had that opportunity. I'm glad it worked out for you to get on that card because we'd been waiting for a minute. Invicta FC 44, And then prior to that, Invicta FC 36. Those are the two bouts where you show up. They're very good fights. I've watched both of those fights a few different times.
Nice.
I believe you won both of those fights, but regardless, that's neither here nor there. Your record is what it is, right? We come off two back-to-back split decisions. I can't think of a worse way to lose a fight.
It's tough.
Right? And particularly the last one, you go through that again, that could take a huge mental toll on somebody and put you in a dark place very, very easy. And you have to wait until the new year. You have to wait until 2022 to fight again. So I guess I wanted to ask you, Katie, is like, how do you just kind of like move on from the fuckery of the last two fights and stay positive?
Especially, I turned 34 a week before that fight, and you be surprised after like a fight like that where the right people and the people who understand the sport tell you that you won, but they're still asking you, oh, so you're gonna keep going? You're like, oh fuck, like really? Yeah, like just pardon my language. I was like, yeah, I'm like, what, if you really feel that way, why are you asking me if I'm retiring? So that wasn't easy, because I did even have moments of thought that way. I was very, very sad for that one. It was a lot of crying and stuff like that, because it was just, and I'm honest about it, it's true, I'm an emotional person, but it wasn't easy. And I felt like I needed a lot of external validation from that one. And then once that settled and I was dealing and talking with the right people, it was just the work that was being put in again, and all the adjustments. I noticed every little thing that could have worked against me. How you carry yourself, the corner, what do you do in the corner when you're this, that. I just started making all these changes instead, and it happened quickly. And so because of that, I feel like that was why I got that opportunity again. So I went back to work.
That's what I like to hear. And speaking specifically about Jones and how that fight unfolded, I'm watching this fight. And I've said this is kind of like my rant, and I'll try to keep it short because I've said it a few different times. Like when I watch Ami's fight, you can see a gap almost immediately. Like very rarely is it that you see two Amis that are like at the very same spot in their career. Like typically there's somebody who's like way more seasoned, way more fine-tuned. Of course, the sloppier person might get lucky. It happens, but you can see like a skill gap pretty early on. In the professional circuit, it's not quite like that. So every once in a while, yes, you would see that, but it takes a while. More often than not, it's like, okay, yep, like this guy's punching is a lot crisper, his endurance is better. And I'm just saying this if it's a blank slate and you pretend like you've never seen these two people fight before. When I watched this fight against you and Jones, and I all credit to Jones, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but I'm also not going to lie. The skill gap between you and her was very apparent, very, very soon. It was almost like watching an amateur fighter with like maybe 3 or 4 bouts going up against somebody who's a professional. Everything was very different. Your striking is what it always is. It's crisp. All the shots are powerful. Just grappling, I felt like you were just on a totally different level. Props to her for taking the fight, but like for you, when you were fighting her, like at times did things feel like it was like in slow motion maybe compared to like some of these other fighters that you've had to compete against?
I know you're getting at too, to some degree, but a lot of what I felt in that fight that mattered to me the most, was my headspace.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel if I foresee the title for me in the next year or two, that a lot of that, it didn't matter kind of who it was if I brought that headspace again.
Mm-hmm.
It would be just a matter of what I do every day, my reactions. And I think when I executed to my fullest, my goal was to say, well, let's run through her. Let's not look around her and underestimate her, but let's run through this girl, because that's what needs to be done. And so we just kept repeating. I was like, we're elite. We've not always shown it. We've not always let ourselves do it, but now's the time. This is my time, and I've been elite for a long time. It's just now it's actually, I actually believe it in a real way, and it's shining through. So it didn't matter who, it was just, let's get it done. So
How cool was it though that it was the second finish of your career? Like you've been waiting a really long time for a finish. You finally get one. It had been like 4 or 5 years since your last finish, and you're able to get another one. That had to have felt like amazing.
it did. It did. It's kind of funny that it was the classic Katie armbar. It was almost like Brad was almost giving me a hard time because we were in a position to just finish her top position with elbows and, Makachev her, which is kind of the goal. But I did make a little blunder there. And luckily I do have a very nice kind of untelegraphed guard armbar that I've had for several years. And Curtis Brigham, that's my first jiu-jitsu MMA coach, give him a shout out. That's just, and it was also tweaked a bit from John, which is neat, just some of the pressure on the bottom leg there. But yeah, it's been one of those things I've had in my game, and I was happy to pull it off again.
I was really happy that you were able to get a finish, not only the win, but just the finish, because number one, that's rare in an atomweight fight. A lot of times those end up being, I won't call it point fighting, but you don't see a lot of like finishes very often at that weight class.
Power and like bendy joints. It's very hard to find finishes unless there's a skill gap.
Yep, and there definitely was. But one of the things that was interesting, and just trying to pretend like I was you going into this fight, it was like I would have felt like under a lot of pressure. Like, and if my mental headspace wasn't right, it doesn't matter who you're fighting against. Like you could defeat yourself before you even walk out there. So like, how did you try to like keep all of the external noise kind of off to the side, and like mentally, how did you just have your mind like right for this fight?
It was a lot of that work had been done since my fight against Marissa in August. So there was a lot of work. I told Julie Kedzie and TJ in their interview how much work I'd done on the mental side. And they even kind of brought it up in my post-fight speech because I shared a lot about it. And even down to like 20-minute priming of mental space before even doing a practice. So it's just, it was Jason Brooks is performance coach of ours that I've known him for 10 plus years, and he's helped me through more than fighting. And so we doubled down on the mental side after that August fight. So, and it really shined through, and that's what that was, because it didn't matter who it was at that stage. So it was all a lot of hard work, actually.
That's probably, I can only imagine how difficult that would be. And I would probably argue in certain respects, it might even be more difficult than the physical aspect of training.
For me, yeah.
I could totally understand that. I think you're in a weird spot in your career, or maybe weird's not the right word, but when I think of you, you're the type of fighter in Invicta that probably, for whatever reason, still flies under the radar. And I'm not really quite sure why that is. I'm going to go ahead and assume it may be because the record is what it is. But looking at it, it's just like, okay, this is like the best fighter that I know of pound for pound that's in the red right now. First and foremost, you've had a lot of bad luck, but I just still don't think people quite understand how good you really are. And in a way, it could probably go to your advantage, right? Because people are going to be like, oh, this girl's in the red. Yeah, we'll make a debut against her. Or, yeah, okay, cool. This person isn't really going to offer us anything. Trains at SBG Ireland. She's probably B-side. I don't care about that. Let's take this fight. And then they get in the ring with you, and then they find out, like, holy shit, like, this girl's actually really, really good. In terms of like matchmaking and in terms of like your career moving forward, does it kind of like put an extra like chip on your shoulder? Like, go ahead, keep underestimating me, keep thinking that I'm not anybody special, but you're about to find out. Like,
I think generally atomweights will have trouble how many shows you can get on. I do think that, for example, when Tabitha accepted it, there's definitely, for me, that showed right there someone who isn't willing to take fights with just anyone at all, from what I'm getting. was very much had no idea what they were going to walk into. Like her coach saw me warming up. They know now, but they probably don't know enough. And so if they do accept it, okay, fine, then she'll have to feel it. So it's just going to be one of those. And it's just, I like the underdog role. It's always been that way for me. And I'm just going to see it as I got to go take it from them, as opposed to feeling like I have to defend something. And that's always worked against me. So I'm just going to keep looking forward at you. They have something I want. It's my way of looking at it, and underdog, bring it. I'm like the Cinderella of that division. So let's go.
I also feel like I have a pretty good pulse on your personality, and it's I can't see you ever turning down a fight unless you're hurt. Like I would imagine like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something could be like, yeah, I want to fight her. And you'd be like, let's fucking go then. Like, I kind of get that vibe that you aren't going to be turning down anybody. And it's just like, hey, if you're going to call me out, if you think I'm an easy fight, then bring it. Let's go.
Yeah, because I mean, at a certain point, what Brad likes to say is, with the Invicta, I asked to be there. I got my chance, and I've shown up against people that I shouldn't have actually beaten. Now, okay, split decision losses, but they were doing MMA and had like 12 amateur fights before I ever did MMA. So I shouldn't have been able to do that with them in any way, shape, or form. So what Brad will be saying is like, what are we in this for? Like, you know, if we aren't going to accept a fight with Jillian Nkorzi or Monique, who I was supposed to fight anyway, like if we're not going to be doing that, what are we doing? So with the record and certain performances that I look back on YouTube, and they can look at that and go, this is easy. But my rate of improvement is like, sometimes I go like, wow, how are you doing this? Like, just it's going like quickly, and it's going with that really high level coach that gives me a lot of attention.
One of the other things that I would say about you that I don't think people necessarily know is you've been playing for real the entire time. No amateur fights. Everything is permanent, good, bad, or ugly. Everything's permanent, right? Like there are people that you'll see destroy everybody on the AMI scene, and then
boom.
And then, you know, not so great in the pro scene, right? On the other hand, you'll see people who absolutely suck on the AMI scene, but they've been taking the right opponents. They've been leveling up every single time, and then they crush everybody on the pro scene. You're right. You're the type of person where it's just like, you don't have the amount of fights that a lot of these other people have because you didn't have an AMI career whatsoever. I think at the front 9 of your career, that's a disadvantage. But at the back of 9, that's a huge advantage because it's like, yeah, I don't have the fight, so I don't have the damage. I don't have all these problems. I don't have that ring time that you have. And that kind of like slowly starts working in your favor, I feel.
It is. I feel that it is now. And some of that's being that I fought on a high level right from the start. And I've had to make those adjustments from those losses right away, or it's game over. So I've learned those lessons quickly and painfully. And the first 2 losses, you go, why'd you do that? It's like, well, and so I just like leveled up, had some wins. And then when I had to test myself again, I came up short. And that one was the pivotal fight of my career here in Ireland against a Bulgarian girl. That was where things really started to trend up. I know I went on to split decisions, but I shouldn't have lasted in there with them. Why am I competing with? Because I'm really good. So I'm trending up.
You are definitely trending up. And before I let you go, I wanted to ask you a little bit, just in terms of 2022, with there being potentially more Invicta offerings, do you have, without looking too far ahead, your last bout was in January. Do you have a rough timetable for when you think you'll be out there again?
I've been kind of relentless on my pursuit for the May 11th card. I know that only some people have been officially given contracts and stuff. I won't say, but I just know that it's probably a long shot, but I am still gunning for that next card. Now, worst case, I end up in June or July, but Shannon knows, she knows that it might even just be easier to give me the fight than to hear from me every 5 days. So who knows? We'll just see if she's on there. And if not, I'll be ready for the following card. I know I'm not exclusive and I can find other fights, but I just feel like I should be fighting for her and getting to my belt. And that's it.
Before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity, Katie. I know that you have a lot of people that work with you. If there's anyone that you'd like to like shout out or say thanks to, I want to give you that chance before we sign off.
Thanks. Just want to thank my, performance, and one of my best friends, Jason Brooks, for kind of helping me through the last 10 years of my life and this performance peak that we're reaching. My coach, John Kavanaugh, for being as patient with me as he is. My partner, Brad, my training partners, Dee Begley, Megan Hamill, just everybody, thank you. I know I'm a handful and I'm very intense. So just thanks for sticking by me.
Well, Katie, I look forward to seeing you back in competition very, very soon. And I look forward to having you back when we talk about you winning your next fight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.